Fox News' Geraldo Rivera was talking about how the so-called liberal media, which he says exists, and the reporters and the producers tend to not talk about Democrats when Democrats do bad stuff politically, or not say that they're Democrats. This is what Geraldo had to say. Check it out.
There have been a couple of scandals, the mayor in Charlotte and then that state senator in California. If you were watching the other channels, you would never know that they were both Democrats. Of course, if the shoe were on the other foot, the first line would be, he's a Republican, she's a Republican, boom.
There is no doubt, and it is undeniable, that the mainstream media is more liberal than anything else. There is an instinct among the liberal, probably mostly Democratic, mainstream media to portray Republicans as hypocrites and
evildoers.
Anytime they sway from the church-going, family-loving, US of A boostering, they get skewered by the liberals in the press, where Democrats, they tend to avoid the party label. There is no doubt about that. Nobody can realistically deny it. It is provable. Rather than try to talk around it, cop to it, we are protective of and usually the politicians who are robbing on the Democratic side tend to be ethnic politicians, as in these cases.
First and foremost, the whole mainstream media label is completely unrealistic. We've stopped using that term because mainstream media means nothing. We talk about corporate media. And as such, the idea that corporate media is liberal is also not true. We have a drastically pro-corporate point of view on corporate media. Yes, MSNBC decides to take a more liberal editorial point of view, but it is still operating within a relatively narrow band of so-called liberalism, right? It is still corporate driven. Remember, when Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks was on MSNBC, he was too critical of the Obama administration. So it was not seen positively to make liberal critiques of a Democratic administration. So it's still a pretty narrow band. That's number one. That whole thing is bogus from Geraldo. But moreover, the idea that it is other networks that don't talk about Democrats or don't label them Democrats when they're in trouble, Fox News is the king, queen, and emperor of that technique. Remember, Mark Sanford, Republican governor of South Carolina, lies about where he is. He's with his mistress in Argentina. Fox, big right on the screen, labels him a Democrat. When news broke of Mark Foley's indiscretions with underage male congressional pages, Fox labeled him a Democrat. Fox also mislabeled Ted Stevens, then under investigation for corruption in the Senate, as a Democrat. They gave similar treatment to Larry Craig, not labeling him a Democrat after he was using a wide stance in the Minnesota airport bathroom to try to procure sexual favors, but they just really didn't talk about the fact that he was a Republican except when absolutely necessary. This is yet another instance of projection. I have a feeling, Lewis, I apologize for the crude analogy. Remember when kids used to always say, whoever smelt it, dealt it? Do you remember that, Lewis?
I do, David. And then there was another retort there. Whoever said the rhyme did the crime.
That's exactly right. We see a lot of the same thing happening with conservative and corporate media, the projection of what everybody but them is doing. And it turns out they themselves are the guiltiest of what they accuse others of doing. And this is just so ridiculous because we've been covering this happening on Fox for years, labeling Republicans as Democrats when they're in trouble.
Yeah, and as a viewer, you really should be insulted because some producer, editor-producer is saying, oh, they're not even going to remember this person's name or look them up in the future. Just put a D next to their name.
Maybe. We don't know if it's incompetence or that, which would be a very deliberate thing. We don't know for sure either way. But in either case, Fox News is the guiltiest of them all for doing it.
Oh, of course. But, considering their production value and everything that goes on behind the scenes there, I really doubt that these cases were all just incompetence.
Hard to imagine it keeps happening. Incompetence or deliberate, let me know. We'll follow up about it. We'll take a break. We'll be back after this. And then so much to talk about today. I won't even waste time now teasing it because I want more time later to actually talk about stuff.